What was the Stonewall Inn to you before the riots? What sort of place was it?
Well, the Stonewall Inn was very important to everyone because I think I once said it was like a watering hole in the savannah. Everyone went there. But it was a bright spot because we finally had a turf in New York, and that turf was Crystal Street. Gay bashing was a city sport, but it could not be practiced on that street because of our numbers. And Vice Squad couldn't operate on the street because we'd know who they were. So Stonewall was important for the security of a surrounding area. You weren't in a lonely area. And it also was a great bar. It was a dancing bar, the only one we had. It had a great jukebox with drag queens in control of it. And a dynamic, because some people would have arguments and they would answer the argument with a song. So if you're hip enough, you'd understand all this excitement. And there was this kind of thing of people saying, to show yourself, stop in Stonewall. But Stonewall at the same time was like, I always say like a gay Noah's Ark, because we didn't like each other, all these gay groups. And we learned toleration at Stonewall because there were 2 or 3 types of gay people there. So it was a very interesting place in that sense. It was always different and it was always new. It didn't wear very quickly, but it was a dump. And it didn't have running water behind the bar. If you knew Stonewall, you knew to get a beer and to wipe it down. But it was a mecca. And it was ours, and it was on our turf, and we finally had achieved something.
So Val, you were a little bit younger.
Yeah.
You were underage.
I was underage.
Did you ever sneak into Stonewall?
No, I couldn't. There was another, more of a disco that I could get into because my friend and I knew the owners, and we would basically force our way in, And so that's where we would go, which was this club called the Sanctuary on 43rd Street between 9th and 10th. It's now a theater. And so I heard about the Stonewall, but knowing that I couldn't get into Stonewall, I didn't even try, But the night that happened, we were at the Sanctuary, and a call came in to the guys at the desk. And we were there, and we heard them going, "The drag queens are rioting? What, Stonewall in the Village?" And my friend and I said, "Oh, yeah, let's do it. Let's go." So we hopped on the train, and we went down. And it was, that happened a lot, the raid. So it wasn't really, it's another raid, but it was like, oh, well, let's go down and see what's happening this time. And we went down, and it was amazing. I don't know if it's, but I still remember how humid it was, and I still remember the smell. It was the smell of, it's not that much anymore, but when I was a young kid here, you could smell the Hudson River. It really wasn't nice. It was like it had a smell to it. And you could smell that as you came up from the subway. The humidity, that smell mixed with liquor and bottles being hurled and smoke. That was what it was. And it was just the bottles and the screaming and the cops and everyone actually being pushed back. Remember they pushed everybody back and threatened, and you had to stay back, and then they started hurling bottles at the cops. I don't remember, start hurling beer bottles. I don't think I did. Oh. I don't think I hurled the beer bottle.
So innocent. You were at the Stonewall that night.
I was just going to go in. I couldn't get in.
Tell me your memories.
Oh, well, they didn't always let certain types in if the bar would tip. So I heard from a friend, you're not getting in, because he couldn't get in. And but on a stoop near Stonewall, there was a huge commotion. Mm-hmm. And people were leaving, actually, the area. And someone said raid. Now, we were all trained for a raid. The first thing you did was be trained for a raid. The lights would strobe. You moved apart from anyone, even a friend that you were with. You took out your ID. You be quiet, and you pray and hope that the police were not in the worst kind of mood, because they never said a kind thing. It could go wrong, and you could get arrested, not because of your own fault, because of a troublemaker that answered back. It was a very iffy situation, but even though you were prepared for it, it was like a telegram. When it comes, it's a surprise. Mm-hmm. So I knew also what happens in a raid. The drag queens come out to cheers. Those that are shamed come out shamed. And the youth that without ID are on their way to jail. And we were so victimized at the time that us victims became spectators. If you weren't in a raid, it was very interesting to watch. It was unfortunate, but that's the way it was. So I know that the drag queens had come out. I started hearing them. And as I passed the paddy wagon, there was a vicious cop that was really manhandling a drag queen. He pushed her and threw her back into the paddy wagon, and she kicked him on the shoulder and sent him back. He went in, he beat her. You could hear the moans, the groans, and we all grimaced. But like my friend said, she kicked him. However, her kicking him was the first sign that this night was not going to be like any other. I didn't realize it then. I realize it now. Because what happened was the cop told us, as they always did, and we always listened, all right, you fags, you saw the show, now get out of here. And he turned around in confidence because this is what they did, and we always listened. That night was very different. Something happened in which we started taking a step towards him, a step towards him. I don't know what we looked like. We didn't look at each other, but he found out because I could see the hairs on his neck raise. And he turned around to say it again, and the final time, and he didn't. He blinked, he gulped, he was unnerved, almost unmanned, and he fled for the bar door. And all the police did at the same time in the semicircle because there was enough provocation all along to create a riot. And a riot started, mildly, because people were throwing pennies to insult coppers. But that escalated because there was a total consensus. Usually in a riot, I had seen other riots, not participated, but there's always someone trying to hold you back. It never works, but you hear those voices of reason. There was no voice of reason except a consensus of reason. Even the gays in suits, professionals, in danger of losing their job if they joined us, most of them didn't, some did. So there was always an inpouring of types that were taking a real risk. And because of that consensus, we just moved on and rioted, and it continued and escalated.
What was it like to be a gay man in New York at that time?
Well, to be a gay man at that time in New York, well, there was a city of the day under Lindsay, happy, prosperous, enjoying themselves. And then there was a city of night in which the straights continued to enjoy themselves, but they retreated from the waterfront, from the parks that were deserted, cul-de-sacs and factory areas. These were deserted by them. There were no joggers then. And the twilight people, the gay people, took over these areas. Except, as I said, for Christopher Street, which was the one bright spot.
Why in the twilight? Why not in the daylight?
Because in the daytime, the surveillance was not, the surveillance was under the sun. The surveillance was complete. At nighttime, people,
invisible?
What did you risk being out in the open in the daytime?
Oh, vice squad, gay bashing, hostile gays, hustlers that don't let you know and then turn on you. No, there was many, many, many evils. And you didn't complain about it. You just went with the excitement and hope everything would be all right. It wasn't always all right.
Val, you were a teenager.
Yes,
You were in the arts.
I was.
So you sort of were in a bit of a bubble.
Yes.
Because we know if it wasn't for gay people, I don't know what the arts would be. I don't know where theater would be. It
Exactly.
wouldn't be anywhere near as much fun.
Oh God! Yeah, I was a dancer. I was being trained as a ballet dancer. So I was actually, I had I guess I got 3 scholarships. And I was trying, I was at Harkness, I was at High School of Performing Arts, I was at American Ballet Theater. So I was doing all this. So I was in a sort of a bubble, and I really didn't experience oppressive, except for one time. And it came from the head of our dance department, who was a female, Dr. Yoakum, Rachel Yoakum. She wore Chanel suits, wear hair, she carried a cane. And, coming into a high school where you had the freedom to be, so I thought, be who you are, experience, So 4 friends of mine, we got together and we would meet at lunchtime and we'd have a ball and we would all over the place. And one morning she called us into her office. And I thought, oh, God, this is great. What did we do? This is going to be great. Because I had no idea that. So we go into the office and I'm smiling and everyone, and she closes the door and she takes her ruler and she turns around and she slams it on the desk. Bam! let me tell you about the 5 flaming faggots of performing arts. And I went, and she read us the riot act about what Broadway and Hollywood was buying and what they were not buying. And if you wanted to work, you had to go by these rules or you were not going to work. And I was in shock, but it was the time, and she was letting us know, and because she being gay was going through, and she was like, look, this is what's happening, you guys. Stop it, put your hands in your pocket. Stop flaming. That's not what we're about. And so for the rest, I was like, okay, It was really eye-opening because I'd never been approached like that. Until this day, it's still a shock because I was like, oh God, I'm 14. I'm a kid. Why is she doing? I couldn't get it. Later on, I knew what she was saying. I thought, wow, you're right.
You started to see it?
I started to see it.
Even in theater?
Oh yeah. Once you're in theater, but you gotta get. Once you're in theater, there was almost like a secret group. You're in theater, you were like other minds, but outside of theater, nobody, it was almost like a haven for me, theater, yes, because you were with like-minded others, and you really resonated together. It was beautiful, and because we were young, we couldn't get into all the clubs. I didn't experience that, And we found a club, like I said, the Sanctuary, where we could go, and that's where we went all the time. And it was a mixed disco at the time, because I do remember that. It was girls and guys and freaks and geeks, It was like everyone. It was really fun. And I think they shot some of those, a movie called Clute with Jane Fonda, and they shot a scene in the Sanctuary. It's like a discotheque. That's the Sanctuary. The palm trees were made out of peacock feathers. It was just, and the pews it was an old church, and the pews were on the side, and near the dance floor, and the pew was where the DJ, and it was just amazing, And
it was a sanctuary for you.
It was a sanctuary, but that was it. After that, because no one was. Did you know it was going to be the movement? No one knew it was going to be a movement. It was just another raid, right? Yeah. Another raid. Okay, but we're going to watch it. Blah, blah, blah. After that night, I thought that was it. I didn't realize that it was 3 more nights after that it continued until much later, And and 6 years later, I did a Pride song, which probably wouldn't have happened before.
Right.
That, you know what I mean? Because everybody would be like, really? I even had gay friends after the song came out. It's like, ooh, really? You did that? Ooh, are you okay about it? I mean, how do you feel? Because everyone was like, ooh, what your career's going to be like. You just did this. Right. Didn't get a dime for the song.
So let's talk about that moment in American history. Because there were other movements.
Yes.
The feminist movement.
Yes.
The civil rights movement.
Exactly.
Do you think that Americans, gay Americans, were ripe for this type of a movement because there were other movements happening? Other groups were demanding equality as well.
I also think the hippie movement had a lot to do with embracing all of it, because it wasn't about, and I did hair for years, it was about hippies. It wasn't a gay hippie or straight hippie or black hippie or white, it was hippies. Right. And I think that had a lot. You got that movement really bubbling up, and then the civil rights movement, which was part of that bubbling up, and then you had the women's movement. Everybody was taking off the bras and throwing them and burning them. That was bubbling. So it was like everyone moved at the same time from different places, but we all did this at once, And I think that had a lot to do with, wow, we can't, nobody's going back. Everyone's pushing forward now. Every movement, and that's what happened, I think.
But there was no place for us even in these movements. I mean, Bayard Rustin had to keep it quiet.
Yeah.
Lesbians that had supported and major supporters of the feminist movement were thrown out. So there really was, they didn't want us. I mean, I think the thing that changed or helped change was that at Stonewall, for the first time in 2,500 years, a collective group of gay men displayed valor.
Yeah.
We never had a chance for valor. Amazons had valor, Joan of Arc had valor, and then straight men will respect this idea of valor. But we never had a chance for that. I know it really affected my father's mind. He was very liberal, but never complimentary on that level. When I got home, and the whole city knew about it, he got a phone call, even though we were ignored in the press. Vice was such an interesting thing that the whole city knew. And my father said, it's about time you guys did something. And then 4 days later, which clinched it to me that this edifice could be broken and was going to break, I was walking down the street and there was a sanitation man, huge man, like the refrigerator, the football player. And he was throwing bags in the back of the refrigerator, back of the truck like feathers. And he looked at me and glared at me. And I said, oh, I made a mistake. I didn't cross the street. And this is part of the backlash. But no, he raised his fist in a salute. And never did a man of that testosteronic nature ever greet me as a peer in any way. And I was really shocked. I didn't know what to say to him. I just walked on.
What was the goal of the movement then?
The goal of the movement that followed Stonewall?
Yes.
Visibility?
Well, the original thing was, the Stonewall thing was
Just
to
enough.
have the New York indifference affect the police. We didn't want to change the laws, but we just wanted the police to lay off. All right, you don't like us, you hate us, you condemn us, but just lay off. But that was an antique goal by the time of the 29th, because there was more revolutionary activity on Christopher Street, I'm sure, than there was in St. Petersburg in 1917. It was just amazing and confusing.
So true.
I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I wasn't that young.
And then you didn't know what was going to happen after that. How were the laws? What were they going to do for this is happening? How that's going to affect, what they, because they could have just come in and closed every place,
And I thought they would.
Every place is done. But it didn't happen, Not to get off, but that's funny you said about the straight, because that happened to me with the song. When the song came out, the gay community sort of went, and my straight friends was like, yeah, baby, that's the way you do it. And I'm going, yeah, it was. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fear that, oh God, they're going to come into the neighborhood and it's going to change, It's, oh God, they're moving into the neighborhood. We got to do something, because before you know it, your children, your young kids are going to be going over there, and we don't want that. It was all that stuff going on in the heads of some of the people,
Yes, we weren't trusted.
And they always associated, I hate to say this, but pedophilia with, and it's not necessarily that, but that's what it was associated with. Dark back rooms, places that was seedy, under the underbelly, I always think of that, there's an old movie I saw years ago, The Portrait of Dorian Gray, and he would hang in the and you knew what they were saying. They didn't come out and say it, but the dark places, where you'd have a drink with a stranger. And that was the other thing, is how you met a like-minded other back then. There was no dating apps. There was no, and so you had to, whether you're being at the ballet, the opera, the museum, a restaurant, a glance, a look, a smile.
Oh, yeah.
A glance.
It was like being in the resistance. I mean, you knew.
Yeah.
And then,
secrets, secret language going on,
I had a picture at home, and my sister was something of an artist, and she redid the photo as me as a guru, because she realized I knew something that she didn't know. And she couldn't figure out what I knew. And I didn't know that I knew anything. But she did this, as a guru. And now I understand why she did it. Because the secret knowledge. Because like all these contributions, and his contributions were accepted but never credited.
Val, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Martin. What were the goals of the movement at the beginning?
The goal of the movement was just to be accepted like everyone else, going out on a Friday or Saturday to have some good times with friends. You didn't want somebody coming in and raiding you because you were having a good time. You're not doing anything lewd or obscene. If you wanted, there were places that you could do that, or people, but it wasn't about that. It was just having a good time. And that was so disturbing to them. And it's why we're like, what? You know?
But then very quickly, it evolved beyond that. And it was about what?
I think acceptance. Acceptance. You know, who we are, who you are. You know, I'm not here to judge you, and you're not here to judge me. You know, we're all human beings born to be free. I can't be you, and you can't be me. But we can live together, even if we don't agree on certain things, you know?
Has that goal been achieved?
Oh, I think a lot of it has, yes. Oh my God, because I'm seeing things, you know, maybe I'm a little old school, because I'm seeing things in the streets, I'm going, that's a little too out there, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, the kids today, they, you know, because they don't have those restrictions, they are doing things that we wouldn't even think about doing. Holding hands with another person in the street.
With a confidence.
Oh, yeah. You know, and that's, I mean, the shows now have same-sex couples. You see commercials. I mean, it's just, oh my God, yeah.
And what do you think the goals have been achieved? Of the original goals of the movement, have they been achieved?
Oh, the original goal, yes, because the original goal was for the police to lay off us to stop the vice squad.
And then the secondary goal?
The secondary goal was just to have time to think the whole thing out. I mean, how could you think it out? All of a sudden, we were presented with this opportunity, and I didn't know who knew what and how we were to organize or how we should do anything. It was also grassroots. It was very, very confusing. The goal was, I suppose, the secondary goal was a sort of freedom, but what? And what was possible, not what did we want. What was possible, that was the situation. Yeah.
So now we look at the movement today, and we have marriage equality at the center of it. It's come a long way from just let us have a good time, please, right?
And also you have to remember, before it was just queer. I mean, we have all these other you know, all these other, you know, gay, lesbian, trans, queer. There's like, you know, it's all this other stuff. I'm like,
A to Z.
yeah, it's like, I need to go back to school to learn some of this stuff, you know? Yeah.
So how do you feel now when you watch the news and you see, you know, the Supreme Court pondering marriage equality rights, and you see talk of trans people serving in the military? Is it mind-blowing to you?
No, not at all. No, so, you know, that's what it is. You know, it's always going to be some 2 steps forward, let's push back, you know, 3 steps forward, back a step. So it's just that, you know, but I think it's that way on a lot of levels, you know. I think it's that way on minorities, you know, you make strides and then you get to a point and then you push back, you know. And I think that's with the movement as well, you know.
Could you see courts supporting a bakery that doesn't want to make a wedding cake for a same-sex? You've seen schools refusing to put washrooms, or to set up washrooms so that trans students can use the washrooms that they feel the most comfortable in. So you are seeing pushback.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, I think at the same time, I once read that when it's bubbling, I think the planet is just bubbling now. I don't think it's bad. I think it's all bubbling up so we can see exactly what's happening. I think the man behind the curtain has been exposed, and there's no, we've seen you. Nobody's going to close that curtain and pretend you're not there. And I think that's what's happening.
And the haters are now exposed.
And
that's helpful. Because, you know, when I don't go to see the corporate parade that's on June 30th, but I watch the crowd. And I don't feel any envy or tinge of envy that they should go through what I went through. It's nice to see them be themselves, but with confidence. I was always myself, but never with confidence. So it's a wonderful thing, but it's new responsibilities too with this. This battle is global.
Yeah.
And so either I'm mindset to take on a new problem, because there's always been problems. I don't think I could live without one. But this global situation is something that needs our attention. We have to be ready for that fight. And also, what will our history be? Because now we have a new chance to reclaim our history. And history has a muse, Cleo, and the muses have always been kind to gay people, have always responded. I'd like to see a Homeric history, a healthy history, a history, because we are the heirs of this great classical tradition. And it's interesting to see what we're going to do with it.
You mentioned the corporate parade. I know that you're sort of, you know, being a little cutting there, but it did occur to me that I can't imagine that, you know, shortly after, the year after the Stonewall Riots, when there was the first Pride March, that you would ever expect many years later to have corporations sponsoring floats.
Yeah.
Mainstream, family-friendly corporations paying for people to march in the Pride March.
It's an evolution that I would never have predicted. Perhaps now it's sort of understandable. There's a lot of money among gay people.
That has a lot to do.
You know, before we used to spend it, and always spent it. We were always good spenders, but to no avail. But now we're recognized for our financial power as a group. Maybe that's not the best way to put liberation, but this is America. It's a market value America, and it's very hard to escape that.
Is there a risk that the movement is almost, in an odd way, becoming more conservative? It's about corporations getting involved. It's about marriage and a life in the suburbs and a dog and 2.5 kids and joining the military if you want to, and limiting or recategorizing what sort of a good gay person is. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, the gay people are spending money. Okay, so they're spending money. So we need to give that community something to get that money.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And I think that's basically what it is. You know, that's why you sing. Jesus, I think sometimes now gays become a career choice. You know, it's like before it was like, you know, now you got actors like, I want to do a gay role. I want to play a gay part. Actors back in the day would, you know, the studios made sure that those guys weren't exposed. The Rock Hudson. Now the studios are actually giving stuff out to the press, you know, because they want their actors to, oh yeah, I can do that role. And 9 times out of 10, you're getting someone who's not gay to do the role. You know?
Right.
And
what's your take on this sort of?
Oh, well, I think in the evolution and political social maturity, there's going to be factions. I think that's what we're just starting to see. And it's unfortunate, but time doesn't stand still. And things just go on. But as long as there's goodness in people's hearts, and I think there is in gay people's hearts, we will find ways to benefit society, because it's not only gay rights or just us, it has to be justice. And under the umbrella of human rights, then gay rights is the right thing. Not just for itself, but to offer sexual freedom to all people, to release them from this puritanical bonds that still affect America.
Just one last question, because Vlad sort of commented on this, that now, you know, before it was, I listened to an interview, and the woman who did the interview said, you know, when I was coming up, you were gay, you were straight, or you were nasty. Like, there were only 3 categories. Now it almost feels like the categories are infinite, right? It's LGBTQ plus.
Right, exactly.
How do you feel about that? Is that a good thing?
I'm just getting used to it. I mean, it's interesting because it's happening and it's real. But it's good that people, you know, I mean, this cultural intifada, this shaking off of this straitjacket is good for everybody, because, you know, in the old days, there were some things they could blame gays on. Some gays married, some gays were false, like that movie Far From Heaven. You needed a cover. If you went to a Christmas party, you had to have a lesbian with you. They were very great to do it. They were wonderful. They're the...
That's what the studios did back in those days. You know, they put people together that you would go, oh, that's a great couple, and, you know, it was only for the cameras.
And the bisexual men had to pretend.
But then they were called
They were
confused. You know, oh, you're confused. You do really, you know.
So you like this, that, you know, there's non-binary and there's asexual and there's...
Everybody has a right to be who they are. I think that's what it is, and you know,
You should choose.
You know, some people, some people like Christelle. I don't. I like Dom. You know, it's just, you know what I mean. It's like that's a,
Yes.
You know,
and nothing's more democratic than sex. So I mean, this is democracy, and they say that gays began it in Athens. These two lovers. So it all follows. It's all. The puzzle is starting to be filled, even for ourselves.
Pete Buttigieg says that we may have already had a gay president.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yes, I was so used to constrictions that when I first read The Leaves of Grass, I couldn't believe anybody published it. Really, I couldn't. I was just amazed the little things we would get. I know that they wanted to name a bridge for Walt Whitman in New Jersey, and they were thinking about not doing it because he was gay.
Yeah.
I remember being in Greek history class, ancient Greek history class, mythology, and gays were not mentioned. Not mentioned.
No.
I want to retouch on something that you already spoke about, but you spoke about it eloquently, and I want to ask you again. The future of the movement, where does it need to go?
The future of the movement? I think the future of the movement is the best aspect of globalization, the best act of intercontact, integration between straight and gay people, and ironing out problems that the gays still have concerning minorities. They're not always being taken with us, not being informed. They're not being shown interest for them to have an interest. I was at a gay school, and some of these kids heard about Stonewall, and that's it, because the problems are so vast.
Right there, gay school. Right there.
And I expected they would know because it's a gay school, but there's problems. Yeah.
And you had talked about, don't forget about the rest of the world. Don't forget about the rest of the world.
Right. We have to. It's the way it is now. It's the way it is. It can't be any other way. It's just going to have to be like that because people are really suffering. I mean, I work on a project called Pride Table in which chefs are 5 chefs and they describe our lives. And one of them was this Russian who was beaten badly in St. Petersburg. He got on a plane, couldn't wait to touch down because the plane couldn't go back. And him and his lover just held their hands under the seat until they got here. They're telling his story in this. And it's like New York in the 1960s, only worse. Really, the 1950s, the most terrible decade for gay people. So to hear, that he had to flee as a refugee, a gay refugee, sad.
I heard that
Everybody
someplace else. It was Jamaica. Jamaica. They did a special, and they were showing how they will kill gays and how they were. It's almost like an underground railroad where they're trying to get out, and they have to, and finally they get to the main. It's just,
It's hard to believe, as we live freely now, more freely, that someone's not living like that. And for what? For the same things that we wanted. And they're so basic.
And also, I think people get scared when they see a group that's attaining a certain amount of power and prestige. And there's also that group that says, why? No, that ain't right, We got to do something about that, Like, let's have a straight pride parade. That's what I'm talking about. It's like they start using what one group has used to advance, they take that and use it against them to, that's what's happening now. It's just ugly,
But it is a dialectic. I'm not sure that wouldn't happen. There's going to be a dialectic before there's a synthesis. So we really don't know where we stand until, but it's good. Like say, laws in like say Germany where you can't mention the Holocaust, I don't think it's good because you really need to know who your enemies are. Let them shout it out. Because you know who they are, where they are.
Yeah.
Pete Buttigieg, what do you think of a mainstream candidate, an openly gay mainstream candidate running for president?
I think he's great. Number one, because before he opened his mouth about being gay, I didn't know. That wasn't the issue. The issue was this guy is really good. He knows his languages. He's intelligent. And what? He's what? Openly, with his husband. Oh my God, that's amazing. And I'm afraid, I hope it's okay. But you know how people are. They come after you. And they're going to come after him.
What does that say about where we are in America?
Oh, I think it's great. I think we have. We've made some strides. We've moved forward, a lot, We've taken some forward. But, like I said, you have to be careful because they'll push back, It won't be all the way, but they'll push back. And then we'll have to push forward from that to 3 more steps, and maybe they'll push back a half. And then we'll push back, 4 steps. And then we just keep going. That's...
Yes. Even if it's late, like even the police apologizing for the Stonewall rape 50 years later, it's a very long way.
Yeah.
I'm glad for them. I'm glad they did it. I forgive them, but I won't forget what they did, Because, to me, the police are not a profession, but a mentality. And they'll enforce what is out there to enforce, So I don't really trust them, but I'm glad they did it for themselves, for society, and for the record.